Are the mountains calling to you? Get ready to walk the Tour Du Mont Blanc.
In this video, we're going to provide an overview of the essentials you need to know if you want to walk the Tour Du Mont Blanc.
We're going to cover how many days it usually takes, planning tips, notes on accommodation, and when to go, as well as some of our favorite highlights along the way.
If you're interested in a really deep dive of the route and a lot of the specifics, we made a full vlogumentary of our 9-day counterclockwise hike on the TMB in August and September. But in this video, we're just going to get into the kind of boring, specific logistics.
Not boring. Planning's the best part.
So let's dive in. I'm Shawn.
I'm Lainey.
And this is Days We Spent.
Fast facts about the Tour du Mont Blanc. Most people just call it the TMB, and in fact, you'll see that on most of the sign postings. The total distance is about 170 kilometers without the variants.
Total elevation gain and loss is 10,000 meters, which means you're gonna hike essentially from sea level to Mount Everest.
That's 32,808 feet. The maximum altitude you'll reach on the traditional TMB route is when you cross into Switzerland on the Grand Col Ferret, and that's at 2,530 meters. If you take any of the variants, you will reach an altitude of 2,665 meters.
The Tour du Mont Blanc is a 3-country route. It's one of my favorite things about this trail. If you walk the entire loop, you will walk through France, Switzerland, and Italy.
On average, the route takes anywhere between 7 and 12 days to walk this. We did it in 9 days.
If you're an ultra marathoner, you can do it in 1 day.
That's an average of anywhere from 14 kilometers a day to 24 kilometers a day. The TMB is a loop hike, so you can start in any location and you can go in any direction.
Although counterclockwise is the most popular direction.
There's a lot of public transit options, so you can do short sections of this hike. You don't have to do the whole loop to walk part of the TMB.
If you want to connect with a bus, a gondola, or a chairlift. A lot of the signage on the TMB is marked in minutes and hours, not in distance. 5 kilometers straight uphill is very different than 5 kilometers flat.
And those times are just for the average hiking speed, and they don't include breaks. So you'll need to adjust accordingly based on your abilities, how strong you're feeling that day, and how often you want to stop for snacks.
Planning and booking the TMB. The most important part of your TMB hike is going to be planning your accommodation, your dates, and the direction that you're hiking, because the logistics of getting this trip planned months and months in advance is the most challenging part of preparing for the TMB.
Limited accommodation and increasing popularity of this hike means there is not enough accommodation for everyone. So most people start to plan their trip about a year in advance, and that means you're doing all the research for where you want to stay and the distances you think you're going to walk.
You can camp on the TMB, many people do, but we didn't camp, so we don't have any advice about that. But this is going to be advice for booking refugios and refuges along the way.
Because staying in the huts is so popular and really, really fun.
It's super fun.
So we're just talking about booking those huts right now. These can be accommodation that's a dorm style. They can be a semi-private room with like 4 to 6 beds, or it could be a private room for 2 or 1. We booked our late August and early September hike in November, and the dates we ended up walking were dependent on what was available. So if we had booked sooner, we would have had better choices.
Even in November, some of the refuges and huts that Lainey in particular really wanted to stay at, they were already gone.
Almost all of the bookings are done on the TMB Association website, which is linked in the description below. And those bookings typically open on October 15th. Check the date. I think they change that every year a little bit. But this coming year for the 2026 season, October 15th is the day that you're going to be available to book all the accommodation. Actually, not all, most of the accommodation. Not everything is available on the TMB Association website. Some of the huts are privately run and you have to book them through their website directly. So if you want to stay in one of those, you'll need to check what day those places open to make your reservation, because some of them don't open until January or even April to make those reservations.
Basically, if you want to get the best spots that you have your heart set on the exact date, you have to treat this like a Taylor Swift concert and sit there on October 15th, just refreshing the page till it's time to book. So the number one thing you want to do when you're booking your huts is to decide when you want to go. There's a lot that goes into this decision, but if you want to stay in the huts, you can really only walk the TMB from June to like mid to early September. They are not open outside of those dates.
June is the least crowded time to walk, and there's going to be lots of wildflowers out, but you might encounter snow on the high passes and you'll need to pack micro spikes to be safe. July and August are the most popular months to walk, but that's also because everything is open, all the services are available, and there's this really fun atmosphere on the trail.
And it's most popular because the weather is the most predictable. You're more likely to get sunny days.
You can get afternoon thunderstorms, though.
Of course, it's still the Alps. You might have 8 full days of terrible weather. September can be less crowded because the weather gets a little bit more dicey, but you will also find that some things start to close even as early as September 1st, including chairlifts, huts, and even restaurants.
The next thing to decide is which direction you want to walk. We mentioned that counterclockwise is the more popular option and it's the more traditional route. They say that the views are better when you walk in that direction, and the starting point from Les Houches in the counterclockwise direction is a much easier first day, rather than if you go clockwise, your first day is this huge climb. So if you go clockwise, it's wise to start from a different point than the traditional point in Les Houches. That leads us to, you need to decide where you want to start. Traditionally, the guidebooks have you starting in Les Houches, and that's where those arches are, and there's a nice visitor center with information for you, and they'll tell you what's open and what the weather is like.
Chamonix is also another popular starting point. It's the biggest city on the route. There's gondolas to get you to different starting points. The train drops a lot of people off there, tons of accommodation.
Many people also start in Courmayeur, Italy, and it's easy to get there because there's a bus that runs under a tunnel through the mountain massif from Chamonix. Champex-Lac in Switzerland is also a popular starting point.
Set a realistic timeline. It's really important that you do this route in a number of days that's comfortable for your fitness level and comfortable for your budget. We met couples that were walking it in 7 or 8 days. We did it in 9 days, and we heard from other people that were doing it in 11 or 12. You can build in 0 days. You can walk it really quickly, but be honest with how fast you can walk this route, because the last thing you want to do is commit to a bunch of bookings that aren't realistic for how quickly or how slowly you want to do this route. A lot of these bookings are non-refundable and you pay in advance.
If you're a slow walker or you want to do big days on trail, you need to remember the refuges. You need to be checked in usually by 6 p.m. if you want to have the dinner. And on the other hand, if you want to do small days on trail, just know that you'll spend a lot of time in the afternoon in the refuges chilling out. If you do plan a 0 day, we recommend doing that in either Courmayeur or in Chamonix. It's okay to plan your route using the gondolas, the buses, the chairlifts, some of the public transit that exists in the area, but most of them are only open in July and August. Some of them were still open in September, but not all of them were.
Lastly, we recommend that you start planning your trip with your must-have dream refuges. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and there are some really beautiful, charming places along the route. Find the 3 or 4 places that you absolutely want to stay at and try to piece them together in your bookings. Make that your priority because it really will enhance your trip.
And think about your needs when you have these must-have refuges. Do you want something that's a little more fancy, or do you want something that's a little more rustic? Are you okay going outside to use the bathroom, or do you need a private room every night? Because every place is very different and very unique.
But we love them all. So speaking of accommodation, what is it actually like to stay in the huts and refuges and refugios and all of the places along the route? In short, it's fantastic. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, hi,
welcome.
We walk a lot of Camino de Santiago routes in Spain, so we're very comfortable with group accommodation in what they call albergues. Bunk beds and stacked together beds in a lot of the refuges were very normal to us. They might be surprising to you, but they're a really big part of walking the TMB. They help you build community. You start to recognize people on the route.
Sometimes the beds are literally mattresses pushed together on a platform, and other times you'll have bunk beds, and sometimes you'll have a little more space between the beds. Again, it just depends on which place you've booked. We had some private rooms that were really nice with shared bathrooms, and we also booked a hotel in Courmayeur area.
I literally slept right next to a strange dude and it was fine. But if that's not your cup of tea, you need to be very aware that dorm style accommodation is often right next to someone else.
Most of the refuges have showers, and they're sometimes coin operated and sometimes a little push button. You should be, quick and fast in your shower to save the hot water for other people.
If there is hot water, some of them are cold water. We didn't have any of those, but we've heard that some of them are cold water only.
The bathrooms are all typically group bathrooms and non-gendered. So you are, brushing your teeth next to everyone else. Sometimes there's lots of bathrooms. Sometimes you're going to wait in line for the bathroom. Refuges don't allow you to walk inside with your dirty shoes or your boots. So you will have to leave them on the boot rack or in the boot room. Most places will have like this big bucket of Crocs or like other sandals for you to use.
Mostly Crocs.
Yeah, so you could use the communal Croc. Most people will wear socks with them anyways, unless they're using them in the shower. You can bring your own Crocs or embrace the you never get the same pair and they never fit Crocs. Most of the refuges have something called half board, and that includes dinner and breakfast. And if you're staying in a place with half board, you're usually obligated to partake in that. And it's oftentimes a really wonderful meal that you're served for dinner, and it's communal. Sometimes you'll have an assigned seat at the table. Other times it's kind of like a free-for-all.
We had buffet style, we had service, we had the whole gamut of them, but they were almost all very, very good. Local food, very, very filling, hearty. We got seconds most places. They would bring around a big cauldron of soup and we were like trying to eat it all. It's well worth the money to do half board. There's no cooking facilities in the refuges, so just embrace the half board. It's well worth it.
Breakfast is typically like bread and butter and jam with coffee and sometimes juice. And a nice one will also have yogurt and muesli and cereal. A lot of times there's so much bread available, you end up wanting to like take some of that with you for a snack later. Breakfast is usually served around 7 a.m. on average. So if you are someone who wants to be up and at 'em and hiking earlier, it's not always possible if you want to have the breakfast.
So what is it like when you're actually on the trail? It's amazing. This is an absurdly pretty route. If you've seen pictures of the TMB, it looks better than that in person. You're walking past glaciers, mountains, meadows. It's incredible. But the main thing that you're going to have to deal with on the trail is weather. Weather is going to determine how far you go, what you do, which routes you take, can you take the variant, what you're wearing. Weather is king on the TMB, so you will want to check the weather every day. And that's pretty much all people talk about in the refuges. I heard it's going to rain tomorrow.
Are you taking the variant? Which one? Because speaking of the variants, you were not advised to do any of the high route variants, and there's a number of them you can see on this map, but you are not advised to do them if the weather is even remotely not okay. Meaning if it's foggy, if it's a little bit rainy, high wind, because they're very dangerous and not very well marked compared to the main trail of the TMB.
The variants almost always go up to a higher point and then back down to meet the route again. That means that you're going to be adding elevation and possibly time to your route. One of the main reasons to take a variant is for more extreme, beautiful views. So if you're socked in with clouds and rain, there's not a lot of reason to put yourself through a variant because you're not going to be able to see what you're hoping to see.
Even though the TMB is an alpine route and you're mostly out in the middle of the woods, you do walk through a number of small towns, villages, and small cities along the way.
You're probably going to pass through some type of settlement
or a refuge
pretty much every single day. And many of them will be open for coffee or lunch or a place to fill your water. So you're not out in the middle of nowhere all the time. There is support. It varies, obviously. There are a few sections that are very lightly supported. So check your guidebook if you're doing a particularly long day or if the weather is particularly hot or particularly wet, because that's going to be important to know where your contact points are.
That brings us to water on trail. In general, there's quite an abundance of water fountains everywhere on trails, sometimes at the refuges, sometimes kind of on the side of the road or the trail. And some sections have more fountains than others. Switzerland was full of water, so much water everywhere. But there were some sections in France where there was no fountains at all and you had to purchase water in big bottles that was very overpriced from all the refuges. And that was from Champs all the way to Les Houches. So there's this huge section in France that you will need to prepare for that.
As you're passing through these towns, you've got breakfast in your belly and you have dinner waiting for you. You really only need to solve lunch. You can do this with light snacks. We always had snack bars and things on us, trail mix, nuts, and that sort of stuff. If you want something more hearty, you can buy the pique-nique from the refuge. They're around 13 euros per person. They vary. They're usually a sandwich, apple, bit of chocolate. They're good. I think they're slightly overpriced for what you get, but you're getting the convenience of just grabbing it and going, which is really nice, especially on the places you don't have as much support, but you can also buy meat, bread, cheese, all those sort of things from the grocery store and make your own lunches wherever you want in a beautiful meadow for a lot cheaper.
You can also eat lunch in a refuge that you pass, but just be aware that's going to be more expensive and the hours of the kitchen being open is more limited. So you have to get your timing correct to take advantage of a hot meal for lunch. There's also sometimes snack bars called buvettes. Those are more often open in July and August, but they're a really great option for cold drink, any kind of additional snack that you want.
There are food options all over. It just depends on your budget and your tastes. So now that you've planned your route and you've got your bookings, how do you actually get to the Tour du Mont Blanc? The most common way to get to wherever your starting point is probably going to be flying into Geneva and then using either a bus or taxi service or the train to get to Chamonix or Courmayeur or Les Houches.
We did two different options to get to and from Geneva. On our way to Les Houches, we did a private transit, which was called mountain drop-offs. And we did their like super saver fare, which essentially they pick you up at the airport, group you with a few other people, and they drive you in a van direct to where you have requested to be dropped off. That took us about an hour and 10 minutes of driving. So it was really fast, even in the pouring rain.
Fast, friendly, easy. We spent 85 euros for the both of us because we got a good rate. Sometimes that rate will be quite a bit higher, which is why on the way to Geneva, we took the other option, which was the train. We booked this through SBB, the Swiss train company. It's about an hour and 40 minutes. That was our train ride experience. It's a lovely train ride. It's a local line, so people will be getting on and off. And it was about 21 Swiss francs, so about 25 or 26 bucks.
If you are taking the train, you're going to have to take a little local train from Les Houches or from Chamonix to
Saint-Gervais-le-Bon. Saint-Gervais-le-Bon, Les Fayet.
That's where you're going to get the train that goes to Geneva. So you can either get a transport or something just to get to that station.
So let's talk about the total cost of the trip. You are walking through some pretty expensive parts of Europe.
Switzerland.
You're kind of at the mercy of the prices of these refuges because they are limited in space. So this is an expensive trip. We're adjusting these numbers from the exchange rate at the time we spent them in euros and Swiss francs, putting it into US dollars just so that you have a better sense of that. But exchange rate's a moving target. For the both of us, we spent $2,308.36 for our 9-day hike.
That number does not include our flights, and that also didn't include any of our like accommodation and food prior to starting the route, but it does include our transport to Chamonix.
So it's like from Geneva to Les Houches, walking around and then getting back. But it came to about $1,150 per person for our hike, which is fantastic because that's about $128.24 per person per day. You might spend a little bit more. You'd have a hard time spending much less than that.
If you want to eat more hot lunches, I would bump that to $150 a day.
And if you're someone who likes to get a cocktail at the end of the day, that can be quite pricey.
Yeah, we didn't actually drink that much on this trip. If you are someone who wants a cocktail or wine with dinner, you're definitely going to spend more.
So a more detailed breakdown of that number is we spent $1,466 just on accommodation. So that was hotels, refugios, huts. It was about $733 per person. So about $91 per person per night just for accommodation. Even if you're staying in a private room, the refuges still charge per person. You don't get a room rate. So it's actually really easy to budget for 1 or 2 people. It's going to be almost the exact same budget.
So that number is for 8 nights of accommodation, and 7 of those were half board. And 1 of them was just breakfast, but not dinner.
It was a hotel where we had a lovely dinner out at an Italian restaurant.
On food and drink, we spent $465.19 total, $232 each, which breaks down to $25.84 per person per day on our food and drink.
That number is so low because our dinners and breakfasts were kind of bundled into our accommodation. So that's essentially $25 a day for lunch and snacks.
To break that down further, we spent $35.80 on groceries, 15 euros and 52 cents on water.
If we went to a place that had a nice pastry or a cool lunch, we just enjoyed ourselves. So we spent $308 on dining, mostly just one dinner and then all of our lunches.
We did a lot of picnics.
Yeah.
We spent $105 on coffee, and we think of coffee as separate only if we're only getting coffee. If it was like coffee with a snack, that was in the dining category.
It was about $6 per day on coffee, which I think is great.
Which is probably like one coffee a day.
Yeah, some of the places are pretty expensive. And we only spent $32 on alcohol. If you're someone that enjoys a cocktail or wine with dinner, that number is going to be much, much higher. We spent $258, $129 each. That was mostly to get to and from Geneva. We spent $97. That was 85 euros to get to Les Houches. And then we spent $53 for both of us to take the train back to Geneva. We also spent $107.84 on gondolas and chairlifts.
I think we did 3 of them.
We did a gondola on day 1. We did a chairlift down to the gondola into Courmayeur. And then we did one more chairlift on the last day to connect a little part. It was a super short chairlift.
You should watch our vlog. We took a route we shouldn't have and didn't have enough water.
So if you take gondolas every day, it's going to add up very quickly, but they're a really cool resource. They're just beautiful. We love a good gondola ride, especially if you're trying to shorten your day.
Other expenses you need to take into account is an eSIM. We got an eSIM for our Olafly for Switzerland. We spent 47 euros for one of us to have a Swiss eSIM.
Lastly, we spent $37 for some ibuprofen and some arnica gel on the way because my knees started to hurt.
A note about money on this route is you are going to need a lot of cash. And we say cash, we mean in euros and Swiss francs.
A little bit of Swiss francs. Most of the time you're going to be in France and Italy. Switzerland, we were only there for a few days. They do typically take euros at the refuges in Switzerland, even at the restaurants, but you're going to have a less than favorable exchange rate.
There are lots of ATMs on the route in the villages and cities that are in the valleys. So in Courmayeur, you can get euros. In Champex-Lac or La Foulie in Switzerland, you can get Swiss francs. Just go to an ATM when you get to Europe and get out the currency.
We did run into multiple people that were really low on cash, didn't have enough cash, had to skip getting a coffee or lunch because the place didn't take a card. A surprising number of the refuges were cash only. This is really important. Overdo it a little bit on your cash. Paying for just 2 or 3 nights of refuges and lunch is going to wipe your cash out. Several hundred euros is a really good idea. What to pack for the TMB? Packing for the TMB is a really important part of your planning process. It's so important that we actually each made a separate video with everything that we packed for the TMB. So we are going to link that in the description.
It might not be out yet if you're watching this right away, but just be patient and come subscribe and you'll get a notification when that video is ready. All you need is 1 set of trail clothes, 1 set of refuge clothes. You need some warm layers, rain gear, first aid, a towel, and you need a sleep sack. And that is all the essentials that you pretty much need. Again, more details in our packing list.
And a toothbrush and soap. There's a lot.
Unless you're camping, you really don't need to bring a lot of gear. I carried everything in a 36-liter Gossamer gear bag, and I did not need 36 liters.
I actually carried everything for this entire route in a 7-liter lumbar pack.
He's a bit crazy. You don't need to do that.
That's more extreme, but it basically highlights you don't need to bring as much stuff as you think. So here's some of our final advice, some tips and tricks. You have the best TMB ever, and then you want to walk it again and again and again and again.
Our first advice is to plan your first 2 or 3 days with smaller distances because your body is going to be adjusting to the altitude and carrying your backpack. We did not do that because of the hut availability, and I really wish that we had shorter days in the beginning.
Number 2, book as early as possible. Like we said, October 15th, Taylor Swift tickets, click refresh. You're just going to give yourself more options to have the type of trip that you want to have.
Number 3, sun protection is crucial. Cover up, slather with sunscreen. You are at altitude, the air is thinner. Those UV rays are really, really strong, even if it's cloudy.
Number 4, picnic lunches from the refuges are nice, but if you want to save money, the grocery stores are fantastic. Get some Swiss chocolate, get some local meats, local cheeses. It's a great way to save money and have lunch when you want it, often in one of the most beautiful environments imaginable.
Number 5, use an electronic guidebook instead of a paper guidebook. We used the Cicerone ebook. Overall, I thought it was really useful, helpful, but the ebook version meant that we did not have to carry a heavy book. We also recommend bringing a small paper map because sometimes your GPS just will not work and you don't have phone service in some of the passes. So to be safe, carry a small paper map, but other than that, get an ebook guidebook.
If you get the ebook, it usually comes with GPX coordinates that you can either put into your smartwatch or plug into a custom Google Maps. It was helpful.
The route is fairly well signposted, but you do want to have the ability to have a GPS.
Visibility gets low and you want to make sure you know where you're going. Lastly, if your phone does not work in Europe, get an eSIM. We used Olafly. There's other options available, but make sure that you can stay connected for the reasons that we just said. It's important if you need help, if you get lost, or if you need to make contact with your accommodation, that you have service, because while service can be a little bit patchy in the Alps, it was still surprisingly good as long as your phone was able to connect.
We have a link in the description below to Olafly, and it works great in Italy, Switzerland, and France. And we like that you can customize the amount of time to the exact length of your trip on the package. And the eSIM option worked great with my phone.
This is not sponsored. We just liked it. So our final impressions is the TMB difficult? Yes. Of course it is. You're hiking essentially 10,000 meters of elevation gain and loss. You can get really extreme weather. You have really steep sections. There were a few parts that really kicked my butt.
There's some ladders, there's some rocky sections, there's some like navigating with some chains, but overall the route is actually really well graded. There's some sections that are just a nice walk in the woods.
Or a nice run. Lainey just started running one day. It's a lovely route. Yes, of course it's difficult, but it's doable. Most people can walk this route.
Especially if you stay on the main route, there's only a handful of very technical sections, and even then they're not as bad as if you're doing the boulder scrambles up to some of the cols and the alternative variant. If you're someone who's used to doing lots of through hiking, this trail is going to feel probably fairly easy for you. If you're someone who does a lot of hiking on the Camino de Santiago, this will be a challenging trail. And we loved giving ourselves that challenge. It was one of the first times we've done extensive alpine hiking together, and that was something we definitely think we'll keep pursuing in the future.
Lastly, is it worth it? Of course it's worth it. This is a bit of an expensive trip. Obviously, getting to Europe, if you're coming from somewhere else, can be pricey. Hiking in Switzerland, oh my goodness. But we really loved our trip. And in my opinion, it was worth every single cent that we spent. This truly is a once in a lifetime trip in an incredibly unique part of the world. Thank you so much for spending your day with us. If you have any more questions about anything we somehow didn't cover, put it in the comments. We love responding to those. We want to help people plan the best TMB they can so that you have an awesome hike like we did.
I'm Lainey.
I'm Shawn.
Thanks for spending this day with us, and go walk in the mountains. Maybe let a cow lick you.
What?
No, that sounds gross.
That sounded great.
Gross.
It is perfect. It's how we're ending it.
Because I wanted the cow going, ow.
I know you do.
Ow.